Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of From Recovery to Discovery. Happy frickin' New Year. It is 2026 and I am old. Good to see y'all. My name is John. I'm your host and I am a human being. Today we are going to be talking about the disease of Forevery and the Glass Ceiling Society. What do I mean about that? This is sort of a tongue-in-cheek type title because in traditional recovery, 12-step programs, they believe that what we call addiction is a spiritual malady and a disease. And quite frankly, there is just not evidence to prove that this is so. The disease of addiction is a concept. It's called the disease concept. It is not a fact. In fact, diseases are observable phenomenon within the body. So, for example, my mom got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that is a disease that was an observable phenomenon within her body. Addiction cannot be found in the body, and so really, ultimately, what we call addiction, it's a habit. Now, I'm not taking away from the fact that it can be a incredibly harmful and deadly habit, but if we frame addiction as a habit, habits can be broken and moved on from, and we as human beings are habit-making creatures. That's why there really isn't such thing as a quote-unquote addict or an alcoholic, because we all have the capacity and propensity to form habits in life. It's part of being a human being. Sometimes we can form amazingly healthy and wonderful habits, like having a good diet, getting enough exercise, having great community and people around us that love us and that we love. But these habits, the harmful ones, are not a disease. And I believe that framing them as such can be incredibly harmful. So, who profits from the disease of Forevery? So, because what they call a disease is actually not a disease, I'm calling the disease, it's not really a disease, but I just, out of kind of a bit of fun, I'm calling it the disease of Forevery, because what it teaches us is that recovery, this traditional method of recovery, is forever, and that instead of realizing that we can actually embody the fact that we can decide that we're happier without drinking ourselves into a stupor every day or whatever the bad habit may be, we can realize that we're actually happier without that. Sometimes it can take some time and some distance away from that pattern or activity to realize that. But once we realize that, it no longer has to be postured as this great battle that we're fighting against one day at a time forever. So I'll use a personal example. Back many years ago, I don't count time, because why would I count time away from something that I don't want to do anymore? But I had a really harmful habit with crack cocaine and methamphetamine. And ultimately, I stopped using those substances, and enough time has passed where that part of my life is like I was a totally different person. Like it almost seems like weird to say, like, I used to be like addicted to those substances or have a habit with those substances. That's strange. And so I don't count time, because I just don't do crack or meth anymore. I realized that I am a happier human being without them, and so I just moved on. So in terms of the program and the rehab centers and everything, they stand to profit and do profit greatly from the propping up the disease concept. If they say that we have a disease that is always going to be present and is always going to be doing push-ups in the parking lot, and that we're always going to be having to fight against every day. Essentially, they never deconstruct what is really possible in what I call discovery, which is realizing that, like, oh, we can be so much happier without engaging in those activities. Because if we have those realizations, then we no longer have any need for the program anymore, and they would cease to exist. So they constructed this whole society. It's actually a cult religion, but we'll just, they call themselves a sort of sub-society. So around this ideology, and that ideology is based upon shame and guilt and fear, but it's kind of tricky because it postures working the steps as a method through that shame and guilt and fear, but actually it's a circular mechanism of just perpetuating it. And so it's a $48 billion industrial complex. They are not in the business of actually teaching people that they can recover and move on. What I will say is that having a supportive community of people that we love and feel loved by is super important. I'm not denying or denouncing that, but from my own experience, that feeling of connection and community in those rooms is extremely conditional, and it mimics narcissistic type relationships. And so, you can't be doing too well, or else, you're living in your ego, or you're living in self-will. And so what is a glass ceiling? A glass ceiling is a metaphorical barrier that keeps people from progressing. So I like to call the disease of Forevery a glass ceiling society, because when I was in it, I thought that I was, quote unquote, living a life beyond my wildest dreams. But the more I immersed myself in the ideology, the more mentally ill I became, because through working the steps, I was always focusing on these so-called character defects, i.e. being a human being, and all of the things that I did wrong in my past, and how I let my family and friends down, and just all of this negative stuff, which had a really, really profoundly horrific impact ultimately while I was there. So I call 12-step programs in traditional recovery the glass ceiling society, because it takes our habit that we formed with drugs, alcohol, promiscuous sexual behavior, whatever it may be, and they frame it as this disease, and that now the suggestions, if you want to belong at least, is you have to go to a meeting every day, you have to work the steps, you have to have a sponsor, you're supposed to have sponsees, you have to have a higher power. And so now all of a sudden I'm addicted, or I've formed a habit to this cult religion, and if I don't do those things, then I'm living in self-will, and my desire for using substances in an unhealthy way is going to come back. And so it's really just this paradigm that's dominated in fear. How is this a life beyond our wildest dreams? I think each of us, they say that we're not unique, but I think that that's total horse manure. I think that each one of us is unique. We have unique personality traits. Certain substances and behaviors are unique to us. I absolutely love traveling around the world and riding roller coasters. Not everybody does. And so if we're all funneled into this paradigm of we're not unique, and we have to do all of these we have to jump through all of these hoops in order to be okay, then it's pushing down our individual sense of purpose and what fulfills us in life, right? So I was in the program for 18 months. Since leaving, I look back at my life, and I have traveled extensively. I've cultivated wonderful community outside of the rooms, made incredible friends, found sports and activities like jujitsu that I absolutely love, that are like really, really hard, but give me a sense of fulfillment, I am more healthy than I've ever been. And that just continues to elevate. And so when I look back at where my life would be if I was still participating in that paradigm, I would be physically and emotionally hobbled, because I would feel like I would have to do all of these things in order to be okay. And so through leaving, I burst through this glass ceiling, right? And I really looked inside and took time to myself. What am I passionate about? What are the positive aspects of life that I want to create in the world? How can I try to help other people? And, they even posture this in the rooms as like, oh, you need to be of service. I'm a big believer in being of service, but it's going to come authentically from the things that I'm passionate about, and not out of this like fear-based, oh, I need to, do free labor for the cult in order to be okay. So there are organizations that I like to volunteer for, making these videos and starting a conversation with all of you about deprogramming and, moving from recovery to discovery, and really stepping into our whole fulfilled self. That's something that I'm very passionate about. And that could, arguably be being of service to people, but it comes from a place of my cup overflowing and wanting to give back, and not from a place of fear. So life doesn't have to be a one day at a time battle. I really believe that the sort of illusion of these destructive habits can make it really hard, especially when we're first getting off of the substance or behavior, to think, oh, life could be better without it. But when we get enough distance away from it, this whole magical world of possibility can open up to us. And from my own experience of observing people that are stuck and brainwashed into the 12-step paradigm, their lives get totally immersed and encompassed in it, and yet it's discouraged for them to really spread their wings and step into what, on an individual level, they're passionate about. And it makes me really sad, because I still know a couple of people on social media that are really just immersed in it. And it just doesn't have to be this mental slavery that never actually deprograms the desire to do the substance. We're not diseased. We're not powerless. We don't have to feel like we want to, our disease wants us to drink or use drugs. It's just, and we have to count days in order to no, well, I haven't drank in 3 years. So, I shouldn't drink now, but I still really, really kind of want to drink. And that's why I'm counting. It doesn't have to be this way. And so that's why I call this video The Disease of Forevery and the Glass Ceiling Society. And you can deprogram, you can move on. You don't have to posture your past use as this demon that's, lurking around the corner to pounce on you. I really, really want to know your thoughts on this subject. How did your time and participation in the rooms hobble you? How did it consume your life, so that maybe other things that you've since discovered since leaving weren't a part of your life? I mean, it totally consumed me while I was there. And so please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you have an absolutely amazing 2026. And keep coming back to your deprogramming journey. Bye.